second finalist, number 107, Harakitaki from Athens. The third finalist, number 27, Arietta Valmas from St. Our fourth finalist, number 110, George Maroudis from Hyde. Our fifth finalist, number 306, Gichao Zhuang from Anatolia. And the final finalist, 128, Sandros Issimopoulos from Hyde. And there are some honorable mentions which I will say at the end of group discussion. Okay?
to today's group discussion. I think we should start by reading out the topic so that everybody knows what we will be discussing. So our topic today is to discuss how a major international sporting event can still be true to the ideals of sport. Thano, do you believe that there are any terms that we should define within this topic before we begin?
The most important term that should be defined is major international sporting event, so we can understand what it is, and probably we could provide some examples, and then move on to defining what the ideals of sport is. And then we can follow a structure, for example, start with stakeholders, and then discuss.
So, how would you define the major international sporting events?
Yeah, of course. So, major international sporting events are sports that are engaged in hosting multiple sports activities and venues with high standards of competition, international significance from global competitors, and a high media coverage from all over the world. And it mostly refers to the Olympic Games.
So, moving on, I believe we're all very covered with that definition. How would we define the ideals of sport that we want to be promoting?
The ideals of sports more or less be the ideals of Olympism and sportsmanship. Would anyone like to define sportsmanship? So I can define maybe Olympism.
I'd like to put in that sportsmanship is actually fair play, equality throughout the game, respect for one another. And I think that's really important as the essence of sport to reinforce that.
And just out of curiosity, would you be putting the ideals of sport only for the athletes, but also for the fans?
I believe for everybody, because major international event affects everyone, including the fans.
I agree completely.
So that's where we can start by including all different stakeholders and like the fans and how they are each affected.
Of course.
So we go to stakeholder. So I believe that the most immediate stakeholder is the athletes, professionals, since they're the ones that actually participate in the major sporting events. And they can move on to the fans and the audience who will actually see them. The media, who promote the whole event, as well as the worldwide community in the long run, since it's a major international sporting event, so the whole world's affected. I don't know if you would like that.
Possibly sponsors, because if it's an international event, for example, Vodafone, Red Bull, Nike, Adidas, they have a lot of advertising in these events.
By saying media, do we include the public image of the sport? Because a major international sport event can help affect, and the ideals of sports can help affect the public image of sports. So
yes,
we do that in the...
I believe, sorry, go ahead.
I agree, it could be included concerning the media coverage of international sport events.
I believe it's in fact necessary to include it. For example, in the UK, there's large amounts of hooliganism, and even though there are few people who are the actual hooligans, the media exacerbates the way it appears on the news and using the media. And so thus we should try to promote a way to, we should find a way for the media to promote clean sports.
Of course, I also think the media is the way that sports are really linked to the public and everyone gets to know about them, and therefore how people are informed. So that's why I think it's so important that we really do take action and measures towards the media.
Of course, and that's exactly what I wanted to add, that media influence the public in a big scale. So that's why we should use media in our benefit in order to promote the ideals of sports.
Instead of saying just sponsors, should we also add the sports market itself? Because it wouldn't be the sponsors in the sports market.
Oh, how would you define the sports market? For example, the athletes and their salaries, or the sponsors, or the media?
Not the athletes themselves, but
Probably some products.
Yeah,
sold by the sponsors.
So all the advertising that is taking place within these major events.
And all the commercialization that exists within sporting events.
We should like to add the government as well as one stakeholder, because we have to fund each international event that takes place in the country.
I think yes.
I think we also must include all the tax revenue that the government takes and all the income it makes from these major sporting events. These Olympic Games are one of their, they do make money out of it, but in many other cases, they've been flawed. losses.
Yes, in fact, Italy had been planning to hold the Olympic Games in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, but they took out their bid in order to say to host the games because of the financial crisis and their inability to pay for it.
Exactly, and what London has to pay now for the 2012 Olympics is they have big budget to fulfill.
As a matter of fact, the only country that has indeed made a profit out of the Olympic game is Spain in the Olympics in Barcelona.
So moving on, should we? Personally, I would like to suggest that in order to promote the ideals of sport, it would be best to find the problems, and what we find are the exact antithesis of the ideals, and find ways to counter these. Do you all agree with that?
I can agree more, but I think it's also mentioned how the ideals of sport are promoted today, which ideals of sport are promoted through sports industries, through the major international sporting events, as the situation is now. It's kind of so that we can establish what is going on now, and then probably can improve later on.
Okay, so by starting defining the root of the problem, I believe that the problem nowadays is that by sponsorship, they use the major international events to they lose the essentials and the ideals of sportsmanship. They try to promote other things, like financial, they try to take financial gain or advertising for their own profit, and they lose exactly what the sport is all about.
So we're talking about the exploitation of sports
Exactly.
for profit, which is commercialization, or over-commercialization, because there is a healthy commercialization.
Yes.
And it was very interesting concerning what you, George, said, that one of the 10 goals of Athens when was hosting the Olympic Games in 2004 was to try to control the commercial aspect of the Olympic Games.
I think we add the measures that Athens took into the solution that hopefully we'll discuss later.
I'd also like to say that I think that it's really important what you said just now about the financial effects basically influencing sports as a whole and the lost benefits, etc. But I also think it's important to mention here that we also see a difference in the athletes. Corruption also affects them as well, and hence that's reflected towards the public. Once you lose the essence of sports, then that leads to hooliganism, especially doping, etc. I think that's also important to mention at this point.
It's a very important and relates to its basic root is the competition, which is no longer healthy because due to the huge financial rewards, due to the glory and the fame that those athletes are gonna achieve after they win in a major international sporting event. It's not motive which will make them do anything in order to achieve it. So this non-healthy competition is something that should be treated in a manner that will have an effect.
Non-healthy competition means them using, for example, drugs and alcohol, corruption are included. So we must have a way to tackle these problems.
I think that all these points lead up to one thing, which other than the loss of ethics, which I think is also mentioned yesterday, is because everyone starts orientating about the fact that athletics suddenly become about winning and not rather participating. And I think that we should really focus on trying to eliminate this mentality and impose the fact that sportsmanship and sports and athletics as a whole isn't just about the big trophy that you might or might not get at the end.
I agree completely with what you say, but I feel as if it would be very hard because when we're talking about major international sporting events like World Cups or like the Olympic Games, the athletes train multiple times a day, and they honestly don't have any other opportunity to have another job on the side in order to sustain themselves and create a living. And thus their only opportunity to make a living is from these sports. And I mean, that's why we see these overly high incomes. For example, soccer players making 20 million euros a year. However, that they're in the prime of their youth, when they're going to be playing the sports between 20 and 35 usually, that's when they have to make the amount of money that they're going to use in order to sustain themselves for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, of course, people are interested in the profits they get out of it as well because it is how they make a living. However, I think that we're agreeing that we don't want unhealthy competition. We don't want winning to be the only priority.
Yeah, so the problem is that the salaries are different. For example, a great player will receive the amount of money you just mentioned. But a player who is not that good will probably receive something much less. And so as he tries to be better and better and use performance enhancing drugs, as you said, all other means,
So this difference in the measure.
Yeah, I understand what you all mean, and I agree. But what Bruce always says is that we shouldn't just abolish the money that people take from sports because it's their way of living. We just have to shift the public's mentality that it's not about gaining money. It's about not only having fun, but generally remind them the ideals of sportsmanship.
And with clean sports, there's definitely going to be a better society, a healthier society.
Yes, I think it would be a very drastic reaction to ban the prizes or money that you get at the end. I think rather what a better thing to do, the better thing to do to apply this measure is to educate people about the importance of things. Would anyone like to add anything?
Well, I want to say that the way that Greece has tackled some of this problem about athletes not being able to find a job after they reach 35 is by putting them into the public sector and giving them public jobs within the government or within the police, for example.
Or public education.
Yes. And this kind of changed their mentality of them being afraid of not finding a job after they have finished they're going after the peak.
I think that is what Yao said is an excellent solution, and that we should add it later on if we follow that. I think that what we're saying right now is mainly the conversion of sports from a healthy physical activity to a business.
Exactly.
Do we have any other problems that we would like to add?
Of course. I would like to add a problem that happened in the Moscow Olympics is that the governments try to reflect all the problems between countries through the major international sporting events. So 60 other countries in 1980 boycotted the Moscow Olympics after the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. So I believe that we should remind people that sports is not a way of dealing with your problems as governments.
However, I would like to add that the main idea behind inventing the Olympic Games was in ancient Greece, was to stop war.
Exactly.
Yes, so that should be the main idea that we must try and support again. And however, we've seen that in the not recent years, in past years, that there are many cases where countries have not been following this rule in a way. For example, in Munich, where there was this Munich massacre where the Israelis launched an aggressive counterterrorism campaign against the Palestinians, I think it was. And it was also seen in the film made by Spielberg, was it? Of Munich? I'm not sure if you've seen it.
Is it only about the violence in sports?
Well, I mean, the Olympic Games was made to stop the war.
That's exactly. And only the Olympic Games are made to stop the war, but and this actually prevents from violence. But we have to face corruption as well. Back in the 1980s, the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, the officials actually were corrupted in order to give tickets to this area, let's say, that caused the events. And so, but this cultural progress, this financial progress that countries gain by of major sporting events is epic. And so each single city tries to host its Olympic Games, and this leads to many problems. So I think the strict rules should be enforced in that area.
Bruce, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I'd just like to maybe work on the structure a little bit. We've identified several different negative aspects, these including corruption by athletes, coaches, governments, all stakeholders, hooliganism, the use of performance-enhancing drugs and doping. May I suggest that we just go through each one of these in a line, and we find the solutions to each one?
Of course, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You also said about commercialization of sports.
Adding to the problems, but we also add racism, because according to the Olympic chapter, the practice of sports is a human right, and everyone should be able to play sport without discrimination of any kind. And in the Olympic spirit, which requires understanding mutual understanding with a spirit of friendship, solidarity, and fair play.
Exactly.
And racism, I think, goes against the values set by the Olympic chapter. So should we add that as well?
Well, disagree, since the Olympic Games is includes all people from all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's already against racism. And also, it's not just racism the skin color people. It's also about, for example, there is the Special Olympics where even people who have disabilities participate in sports.
Of course, I see what you mean, but don't you remember South Africa about the apartheid? That in 1964, South Africa was barred by the IOC from taking part in the Tokyo Olympics because of the apartheid policy. And under apartheid, the Olympic team was limited only to white athletes.
This kind of sports actually try to eliminate racism.
That's just a unique case, a single case.
But it has happened.
Yes.
I agree. I think that, well, these points are all very important and important. However, I think I disagree slightly because that was a specific case, and I tend to go with, because the Olympics offer such a diversity and all countries are included, and you see so many different people, I would say that it's rather counted against racism and doesn't really, I don't think that point.
However, we could try to find ways in order to further promote the anti-racist nature and spirit of the Olympic Games and other major international sporting events. Yeah, corruption was one of the first topics. Should we start by trying to find ways to counter this aspect?
Would you like to divide the solution into long-term and short-term, or generally?
Generally would be easiest. However, we can sort them into which ones we could be implemented immediately and could have short-term results. So corruption can be in the form of, for example, match setting, or generally any use of illegal methods in order to gain a profit from the sports. So may I suggest that we go in a semicircle and everybody just states one point that they believe exists in order to counter corruption? Donna, would you like to start?
Sure. I believe that the most effective solution that could be implemented is a long-term one, of course, education for schools. So that they children are going to be aware of how wrong it is to take money illegally, to set matches, to avoid this sportsmanship, this sports spirit. And by doing so, the future society is going to be much better. At least I think so. So yeah, would you like to add another?
Yes, I think a very good solution would be making the legislation even stricter than it is now. And since by inducing fear to people who are corrupted, they will in a way stop doing it and penalizing the strict.
That's exactly what I want to say. It's an excellent point, I think. I think it would have a great effect and it will reduce corrupt elements in our society.
I think these points are really important, and I specifically think because match fixing is illegal and then it still goes on, that we really need to enforce these rules even stronger. However, I also would like to add that it's important that we make public punishments. For example, just so everyone is aware of the consequences, because I think that raising awareness in that sense, as well as education, is essentially important.
I totally agree with what you're saying, because if the public sees what's going on, it will understand that something goes wrong there better. I would also like to add that in corruption, also sponsors play a major role, because we have, like for Olympic Games, McDonald's or a sponsorship, so that makes us laugh, exactly. So it contradicts the Olympic Games, which promote a healthy lifestyle, McDonald's. So we have to control the sponsors that are able to sponsor each.
Or that are sports related. For example, only allow Nike and Adidas to to sponsor events instead of Red Bull or Vodafone.
Profit is the major motivation, since they would almost accept anyone who gives money.
Exactly. But I'd also think it's important that we have these sponsors, because without them we wouldn't be able to fund the Olympic Games, such important things. So although I think that, yes, McDonald's does contradict what Olympics stand for, we do need the money that they give us in order to have the Olympics.
That's right. So we just have to find the correct sponsors, I believe.
Yes. I don't think we should do censorship or just be out of state with our choice, though. We should make it more of a general assumption.
And if possible, promote the sports-related sponsors. And then if there's still the ability and the need, then to also accept money from other sources.
Probably the solution.
So then what I would like to suggest in order to counter corruption is to take away the medals and the fame that certain athletes or coaches or teams or referees or any stakeholder who may exist do this in a public, ruin their public image as, wait, it was Ayata? As Ayata said. Yes.
Should we move on to
Of course.
I know that just put in just sorry, that Bruce just said. Well, I don't think that we should basically not allow them to get their trophies or, you know, and actually you said previously that it's important that they do get their money when they do.
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just don't think that, I think it's a little bit drastic because it is obviously, a prize is important to show, you know, well done, you've done a great job and everything. I just don't think that, I think education is more important here to not lose the essence of sport.
Well, I believe what Bruce wanted to say, I agree with you, you have a good point. But I believe what Bruce wanted to say is that it connects with what you said about public, to show the public, like, if we publicize that we took off their medals because we were corrupted, not because just they didn't do anything. Just when we found out that they had done the corrupt, that they were corrupted in any case, we should take away the medals and publicize their names.
I might disagree with you, mainly because in cases for example, match fixing, those medals and those trophies and those records weren't won with, they weren't worth of those medals and those records. So I think it will be reasonable that in case of match fixing or any other corruption concerning giving advantage to someone.
Of course, if there's an unfair advantage, especially with doping and everything, I don't think it would be fair. However, I think we should take a more legal stance, seeing as well as the public image is very important. I don't know, I think these ideas are all great, but
Sorry, you have just one moment. What I meant is that from the moment that the athletes or any stakeholder is corrupt, it means that they aren't worthy of any trophy or of any reward that they have gained. And thus, we should do our best in order to destroy this image that they have, this public image, in order both to create a bad advertisement, so as to say, to what will happen to anybody who is corrupt, also to show the public how we are trying to promote clean sports.
Precisely. And thus, all the role models that children would have followed to take drugs or to be corrupted, then we'll see that people should be just wrong.
okay. Moving on to performance enhancing drugs. Is that fine? I think it's important that, well, athletes are usually role models for all these children, and because when they take drugs, it really says that we're only in here to win, and that they kind of dismiss the rest of the athletics, participation, etc. So I think it's important that we enforce legal measures as well as public awareness, etc., and education to prevent performance enhancing drugs.
I totally agree with what you're saying, and I would also like to add here again, to show to the public, provide them their own role models, for example, Schwarzenegger, that would take doping or things to increase his body shapes. If he goes into the public eye and says, okay, look, I took doping or I took different substances, and now I have health issues. So if the public can relate to those people, then I believe that they would see how it's wrong for their health as well.
But in fact, from a research that was done by the New York Times, it said that 67% of the athletes were aware of the negative side effects that taking drugs or doping had on them. And however, there's also another aspect that we have to analyze, which is that of the athletes not knowing that they're taking drugs, but for example, the coaches giving them to them on the side without the athletes knowing, putting it in their food or in their drinks. Which I don't know if there's a way we can counter it, but it's something that I believe we should talk about.
I think that leads back to corruption.
Exactly.
But I'd also like to put in just that most athletes do know that they're taking drugs. They don't think that it's as common.
I agree with that, but there was an example in an Olympics with a German team that they found out that the government was secretly doping them through the coaches, and the athletes weren't totally aware of that.
Just to clarify something, are we trying to prevent athletes from taking PEDs or athletes who have been doing doping, competing in major sporting events?
Both.
I'd also like to put in something that links back to what I said about legal measures. I think in 2004 we had Costas Skouderis and Katerina, who basically, I think they won gold in the Olympics, and they supposedly had a bike accident and couldn't show up for the doping tests. And a trial was held 7 years later. I think that's completely ridiculous. That it was. I think that that's where we see a huge lack in our measures here legally. So I think that's where we really need to take a stance, because obviously, I think this is specifically in Greece, but it's not working with what we have.
Were they sued by the Greek government or by the international? Were they judged by Greek law or international law? Since there's the difference, there's the Greek. The Greek one is a bit,
But as far as international sporting events are concerned, we should change the international laws concerning every country that takes part in Olympic Games, for example.
And also between 1988 and 2000, there were over 100 athletes that were found positive for taking performance-enhancing drugs. And of them, 19 were still able to compete in events because of internal affairs and their coaches being able to cover it up within the society and within the athletic society.
Corruption is the basis. If we tackle corruption, then problem will be solved.
Yes.
Exactly, the corruption is the core for every problem that has been created in sports, if you all agree.
So, do you think we should suggest any solutions for this specific case? Any other ones, for example, better testing methods, more tests conducted on athletes to make sure that they don't use these?
I think rigorous testing is very important. Also education, you mentioned this slightly, but I'd like to just go into it a little bit. I think it's important also in schools, from a young age, for people to know, especially if you're in a sports team, just how bad it is and the effects and everything. Also, with motivational speeches and everything that are given, and awareness, leaflets, etc. I think it's important that it's rather interactive in schools, because often when someone comes and gives a speech, you just kind of listen to them and occasionally you zone out. So I think it's important that they make you feel like you're a part of it and that it's relatable, and that's how I think it's going to be effective.
And if I could just build on that, I believe if we took role models and interviewed them and said how, for example, doping or performance-enhancing drugs or hooliganism affects them in a negative way, because they are not the actual people who are causing it, how that can have a negative effect on them, and how thus they're trying to influence society and other athletes to stop doing this.
Probably the oldest will stop doing so.
Totally agree to that. We should also promote the already existing organizations like that of the ADA, that's an anti-doping agency, and we should promote it to the public in order for people to get more aware and ready to do their
Or Amnesty International, which tries to fight corruption.
Of course.
Those are excellent. And I think that another solution could be taken is that science could progress. It could find ways to make those drugs less harmful. Because if athletes are going to take them, and if those measures have already been not going to be effective, then at least we shouldn't have all these implications.
However, it is a cat and mouse game, since as technology progresses, so do the drugs.
Yeah, exactly. If some drugs are allowed, and if a booklet, let's say, of building starter was sets the rules for the living games or other major sporting events, then every single athlete will be able to take those drugs. The sports will be more spectacular, and he will encourage himself. And thus, I think that everyone will benefit. There will be no inequality, since everyone will follow the same set of drugs, let's say.
Do we all agree that we should move on to violence and hooliganism?
Concerning violence and hooliganism, a good example would be England and the United Kingdom, that after a big match between, I'm not really sure, I think Juventus and Liverpool, that was the Hazel disaster in Belgium, they put etiquette in every person that went into the stadium in order to know afterwards that if someone did something, like being a hooligan inside the stadium, would be punished from when he went outside.
Another thing they did was punish all English clubs from participating in European leagues for 10 years. And now you can see that in England there are many scenes of hooliganism. So it was effective, it should be effective. There is no problem.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very good point. That if the hooligans of a certain team are in fact creating damages, both psychological and physical, within the society, that then we could penalize the team for it, because then that will force the fans to stop or reduce the amount of which they cause destruction. However, at the same time, we have to look at the aspect of imported hooliganism, where people are played in order to go to certain fields and to certain matches in order to create distress within. Yes.
Exactly, that's what I wanted to add.
It's everywhere.
Exactly. I think also cameras would be a really good idea, and also to encourage membership of the people who go there, so you can just kind of have a better control of what's going on in the matches.
Another topic for violence and hooliganism is, we were talking about it yesterday in my group, is that there's the, on a ticket, if there is something going on that worries you or that is negatively affecting you, you can push a button. And for example, a security guard will come and they will sort of protect you, to say.
That's very interesting.
Or they will stop the negative thing that's happening around you, the violence.
Of the security part, we know that in the Netherlands, they used to have the worst corruption in all of the world. However, the government, by adding more security and more police, and increasing the police force, they have successfully reduced the number by almost 80%. So you see that if the government support of reducing hooliganism is a very important factor too.
Adding to that, to both sides were very interesting points. Because we know that police sometimes provokes the hooligans because they feel pressured, and we can make some people go like undercover, if you like to say that, inside the stadiums and just look around and make sure that everything is stable in the stadium.
Or put just cameras, which is
Exactly.
more cost effective and is in the long run. Sorry, George, you were going to say something.
I think that all those solutions would be perfect in a case where the country has necessary funds. What could we do if, for example, in the case of Greece, what could the Greek government do to help reduce hooliganism?
Sorry, yeah, you're going to say something.
I think that what the Greek government could do is make the teams solve their US tickets, let's say, the ones that are from, but allow each Euro to go into the stadium throughout the year to be cheaper than the ones for a single match. By doing so, you know your audience. You know they're not hooligans, you know there won't be much problem that you can ban them from entering the stadium. So I believe it's not a measure which will cost money, let's say, the government, and it would be effective, if you agree.
One more thing is that because we're talking about major international sporting events, it's going to be happening in different places worldwide, and the profit that exists is immense. For example, in 2009, the US Open purse went up to $21.6 million, which to a large extent went to the different stakeholders and to different costs. However, to a large extent that was also to profit, and thus we could tell them that when you're supporting this event, you have to have these certain security measures, and that will be part of your budget that you have to pay for.
And we know that Olympics, exactly as you said, cost an economic boost to the country for some years.
I personally think that we have exhausted these solutions.
So should we move on to commercialization?
What do you think would happen to about social commercialization?
First, I believe that what you do with abuse problems, there are no incentives to promote negative commercialization. Because if there are no PDs, no corruption, no hooliganism, then negative commercialization do not have necessary feedback to exist. So by dealing with all the problems, we manage to avoid negative commercialization. Would anyone answer?
Yes, I'd like to say that while commercialization can it can lead to negative aspects of promoting the wrong ideals. For example, like McDonald's, as you said previously, which wouldn't promote a healthy lifestyle. It can also offer the opportunity, which would otherwise would not exist, for better sports. For example, it could help bring in uniforms or goods or machinery that otherwise wouldn't have existed. So it's definitely something that we need, but we should work on promoting in a positive manner, which I agree completely. We should focus on countering the corruption and the negative aspects and try to influence the positive ones.
I totally agree. And adding to what we said about Greece that had some economic problems, that through commercialization we should also promote volunteerism for people. That through the media, we should invite people to take part into sports, into major international events, and by that we will also decrease the hooliganism, because I believe it's big solution, because if we promote family participation, then also the hooliganism phenomenon will be decreased.
But we should now maybe realize that the basic solution is media for the rest of the points. So through media we can promote volunteerism, opposing of violence, and like that. So there are great measures to promote.
In fact, we did actually include media, even if we didn't mention it. For example, education and the primary education, or the interviews, as we said, with the athletes. That is a form of media. Yes,
I think the thing brought up had just now with the family membership and everything, I think that's really, really important because sports have become sort of, especially football games, that I noticed that not so many families like to participate in that anymore, so I think that introducing that idea would be really, really interesting. As well as we get, obviously, more funds for, the games, etc., if more people would be coming to watch, so that's excellent.
There's also the problem of, for example, the buying of the sports by the cable television. For example, 20 years ago, friends have told me that you could watch sports on any public channel. However, now it's very hard to get many of the events on a public channel, and you have to buy it for cable, which many people can't afford. And if it's in another country, they can't afford to watch it there anyway. So what do you believe we could do about this in order to make it possible for everybody in the world to watch these sporting events?
Well, I believe that these the channels should be subsidized by the government and should be provided by the government to the public, since the public is the ones who are paying the taxes, and they should be allowed to have access to the games, as it is one of the major things in our days.
One of the basic stakeholders.
Exactly.
If they can watch these games.
Seeing as we have 4 minutes left, unless we have something else to add, we should probably start on summing up. Would anybody like to, or should I?
Yeah, of course, I'd like to. We started talking about corruption, which is a big problem, and we talked about that we can decrease it by harder and harsher legislation, and also raise public awareness. And thirdly, take away the medals and the fame, as we said, from people that prove to be corrupted. And also, fourth, control the sponsors that take part in each sporting event. Then we moved on to performance enhancing drugs. And we talked about that we should control the role models that people have from sport events. We should also make harder the legislation in the short term. We should make harder, as you said, the test methods. We should also organize to promote organizations that already promote anti-doping theories. And also the science improvement, that one day we might have drugs that do not want to affect the people that take them. We then moved on to...
We said we had one more thing, which was the interviews with the athletes, the role models, the correct role models, which would keep on happening with as new role models come in to promote the clean sports. Sorry, go on.
Certainly, thank you. We then talked about hooliganism, and that we should penalize the team if their fans are irresponsible with their fans. Then we should also encourage membership, as I said. We should also increase the security measures by also putting cameras inside the stadiums, which will control people from acting violently. And lastly, we talked about commercialization. And as solutions, we talked about media to promote volunteerism, family participation, and as Ruth mentioned during the end of the conversation, about more channels being able to show the sports to all people that might not have the correct technology.
Very sorry, and just to add on, we define major international sporting events as any worldwide event that includes people from different races and countries, and the ideals of sport as being those portraying correct sportsmanship and fair play.
We must not forget that major sporting events nowadays do actually promote lots of sponsors as peace and avoid racism. So that's not step wrong.
Also, for sportsmanship and fairness.
Seeing as we have one more minute and I'm relatively crazy. How about we also add that we should control how the media portray this aspect. For example, we should tell them that no, you won't focus on the hooliganism as much, but instead only on the sporting events.
Exactly.
Oh, thank you.
Exactly, that if we control the media, we have controlled many problems that emerge through media.
Which gives
It's
more
a argument.
actual government intervention to the media.
It was a very nice conversation. Thank you for coming.
I'd like to thank our judges, Ms. Maniakis, Ms. Simbouras and Ms. Rogaris. And there are a few honorable mentions. Number 82, Athina Fritinidou from Angelidis. Number 187, Nicole Helmis from St. Catherine's. Number 188, Drew Gupta from St. Catherine's. Number 232, Panagiotis Patikos from Pierce. And number 241, Daphne Apostolidis, ACS.